Thanks. I want to thank Deputy Kenny for foregoing his very serious question on abuse of human rights in Palestine to allow me to raise this. And the reason he did so is because yesterday Loujain El Hathwel was with 1,000 days in custody, her first appearance in court, and has been transferred to the anti-terrorism court by the Saudi regime. And her crime for posting posts on social media to do with women's rights. She was jailed just before driving was made legal for women, but she also campaigned, ironically too, on the question of domestic violence in Saudi Arabia. Yesterday was the UN Day on violence against women. So, Minister, I know you've done some stuff on this, but could you please comment on the question I've asked? Will you raise this further with your EU counterparts?
Thanks for raising this issue, Deputy. Protecting and promoting human rights is a cornerstone of Irish foreign policy, as I say in my answer to most questions. Ireland has consistently supported women human rights defenders and continually advocates for the freedom of all civil society actors to operate in a safe and enabling environment. The detention of human rights defenders in Saudi Arabia is deeply concerning, and Ireland has raised our concerns bilaterally with the Saudi authorities. Most recently, on the 9th of November, the detention and welfare of Ms Al Hathwel was raised directly by officials from my department with the Saudi ambassador to Ireland. Ireland also raises these issues in international fora. At the most recent Human Rights Council in October, Ireland co-signed a joint statement which expressed deep concerns at the ongoing detention of women human rights defenders in Saudi Arabia. Ireland has also co-sponsored resolutions at the Human Rights Council calling upon states to investigate alleged human rights violations in the administration of justice and abuses suffered by persons deprived of their liberty. During the last Universal Periodic Review of Saudi Arabia's human rights record in November 2018, Ireland raised its concerns about the imprisonment of human rights defenders. Ireland regularly discusses these issues in various EU fora and works closely with other member states to ensure that human rights issues in Saudi Arabia are addressed. The EU delegation in Riyadh has raised the cases of detention of the women human rights defenders, including Ms Al Hathwel, directly with Saudi authorities on multiple occasions and will continue to do so. We welcome that plans are advancing to establish the EU-Saudi Arabia human rights dialogue. This will provide a valuable additional forum to discuss human rights issues, including individual cases. Ireland will continue to take every opportunity to raise this case with all appropriate interlocutors.
Smith, no mate.
Minister, I'm aware, and I want to also raise the fact that 31 deputies and senators across both houses signed an open letter to you, and you responded to it by sending officials from your department to the Saudi ambassador. I think we have to ratchet it up because they have certainly raised the bar. Yesterday, as I say, they transferred her. She had 1 day's notice that she was to appear in court after 1,000 days of illegal detention. Her family said when they saw her in court, they were shocked. She was shaking uncontrollably and she was very, very weak. She's been on hunger strike to protest both physical and sexual abuse and torture in prison. She's not the only feminist that's in prison in Saudi Arabia. They're charging her with crimes that they claim is espionage and agency work. Espionage and agency work doesn't get posted on social media by way of encouraging women to fight for their rights. So I think you need to ratchet it up and now call in the ambassador himself. Rather than sending officials, please call him in and intervene directly and correctly in this issue.
I appreciate colleagues' concern in relation to this case and others as well that have been mentioned. As I said earlier, officials from my department spoke to the ambassador of Saudi Arabia to Ireland on the 9th of November to set out our concerns about the ongoing detention of Ms Al Hathwel and the conditions under which she's being held, including the restrictions on visits from her family, but also other concerns as well, some of which have been outlined. As a member of the European Union, Ireland also raises concerns about women's human rights defenders in Saudi Arabia, including Ms Al Hathwel. The UN delegation in Riyadh has raised the cases of the detention of women human rights defenders directly with the Saudi authorities on multiple occasions and at various levels. As I said earlier, I welcome plans that are advanced to establish an EU-Saudi Arabia human rights dialogue to be co-chaired by the EU Special Representative Eamon Gilmore. This will provide a valuable additional forum to discuss human rights issues, including individual cases such as the one that has been raised. But I think what deputies are asking me to do is to take a more direct approach with the Saudi embassy here in Dublin, and I'll certainly do that again on the back of the requests today.
Dr. Smith.
I think a direct approach and as strong an approach as possible would do a huge amount more than what's been done and is absolutely required, because clearly the Saudi regime, which is a very wealthy, powerful regime, recently hosted the G20 summit, made lots of platitudes about human rights, talked about all the forum that you just mentioned that they sit in, all of the dialogue they have, but it makes no odds. It makes no odds when it comes to the repression of those who seek their own liberty. And because of their wealth and power, they seem to hold and wield an awful lot of influence in the Western world. But it does require the sort of pressure by calling in the ambassador and insisting that this is dealt with in a humane way, that she is released and that the charges, the anti-terrorism charges, or the terrorism charges rather, are dropped against her. Because clearly what she's doing is campaigning for human rights. And this is important, Minister, because the letter, the open letter that our Oireachtas member sent to you has been circulated in Norway, in Sweden, in the British Parliament, as an example of how world pressure needs to be put on the Saudi regime, and other parliamentarians are being asked to follow the Irish model. If you call the ambassador in and do your absolute best to tell him this is not going to be tolerated, that is seriously damaging international relationships with Saudi, they may well follow likewise. Follow the Irish example, but please, Minister, do something to set that example on behalf of the women of Saudi and on behalf of all human rights activists.
I've heard what people have said, and I'm familiar with the letter and our response to it. I'll certainly take on board the concerns that deputies have. As I said, I'll certainly talk to my team, and we'll try and do what is as impactful as we can to ensure that we impact on the decisions taken in relation to the case that has been raised today in Saudi Arabia.